This is Democracy Watch. So, Mark, there is a potentially cataclysmic update in Ohio where a redistricting amendment campaign turned in 750,000 signatures, and that was to put an initiative on the ballot to end gerrymandering in that state. We just watched abortion rights get codified in Ohio using this exact process. So if this passes, if they have enough signatures, how would this work?
Yeah, this would, by the way, transform the political map if this went through. As you said, this would be a huge deal. And, to put it bluntly, the maps would be drawn by citizens, not by politicians. And we know the politicians in Ohio, the Republican politicians, have failed us before. It would be a 15-member commission consisted of Ohio residents, Ohio citizens, not elected officials. It would be bipartisan, equally divided between Democrats, Republicans, and independents. It would transform the redistricting process in Ohio in the way we have seen it transformed in states like California.
Well, I'm curious about the process of appointing members to actually draw these fair maps because for example, the Ohio Supreme Court struck down the congressional and legislative maps that were passed by the state's current bipartisan redistricting commission 7 different times for being Republican gerrymanders. So we had steps in place before. And so who chooses these people, for example, from within Ohio?
Yeah, so this is really modeled after the California experience, as I mentioned. To say that we had a bipartisan process in Ohio really, frankly, is a bit of a misnomer. Yes, It was bipartisan in the sense that there were both Democrats and Republicans on it, but it was Republican and Democratic politicians, and Republican politicians dominated numerically that process. This would be a citizen-led process, and basically anyone in the state could apply, right? You could apply if you were just a ordinary citizen of Ohio, and a panel of 4 retired Ohio judges, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, would select those citizen commission members, and therefore you'd have a very different tenor to the proceedings, right? Rather than it being the Republican governor and the Republican Secretary of State and state and House leadership, it would be ordinary citizens. Yes, they'd have partisan affiliation, but they'd be selected, like I said, by a bipartisan group of former judges. So I think what you'd get would be, something that would really approximate more the political balance of the state.
I'm sorry to ask another question about the ways that Republicans could screw up the process, but that's just a testament to the times we live in right now. But is there a way that Ohio Republicans could prevent this from moving forward, even if the signature threshold is met?
Oh my God, they're going to do everything. I mean, look at what they did around abortion.
Yeah.
I mean, they tried to change the threshold for how many votes you needed. They tried to move the election day around. Remember this? They did all kinds of shenanigans. And certainly if they're willing to do that around abortion, they're going to do it around redistricting. Why?
Around their own power. I mean, this is existential for them.
Exactly. That's why. Because they may care about abortion as an issue. They care about this because it affects their seats. It affects their power. And so we just have to assume, those of us on the pro-democracy side, we have to assume that Republicans will pull out all the stops. They will do everything they possibly can to try to thwart this, both procedurally, right, as you say, like, the mechanics of it, but also by lying about it to voters and trying to get voters to vote it down. But I got news for them. Every time they tried to thwart that ballot initiative for abortion rights, we met them in court. My team was in court and we beat them. And every time they will try to defeat this through shenanigans, we will meet them in court and we will beat them again.
Which seems like the natural place just to offer this reminder to our audience that if you're looking to support the work that Mark and his team do, which clearly is very valuable, then please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the free news outlet he founded to focus on everything voting in elections. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. A very small step to support people who are clearly doing work that is beyond important right now. Mark, what is the congressional delegation now in Ohio, and what could it be with fair maps in place?
Okay, so this is crazy. Ready? It's 10 Republicans and 5 Democrats. Now, there's no question Ohio has a slight Republican tilt.
Yeah.
But it's only a slight tilt. It's got a Democratic senator in Sherrod Brown, and it's got a Republican senator in the one and only J.D. Vance, right? Can you, think about that for a second? Its governor is Republican, but actually is sort of from the more centrist model of Republicans, such as they exist for governor. And so this is a state that should probably be, if you think about it, if it has 15 members, you'd expect it to be 8 Republicans and 7 Democrats. And I think if, in fact, you had a citizen-led redistricting process of a bipartisan nature, that's what you would see. You would see 8 Republicans, 7 Democrats. Maybe if Democrats got lucky, it would be 8-7 the other way. If Republicans got extremely lucky, it would be 9-6. But 10-5 just speaks to how gerrymandered Republicans have made this congressional map.
Given what we're looking at right now in Ohio, is this a model that could be replicated in other states where Republicans use their control over the state legislature to, continue passing rigged congressional maps?
Yeah, so unfortunately, what we've seen is that where Democrats control the process, they do pass these kinds of initiatives. Take California. I mentioned, California has a process just like this. Could you imagine if Democrats in California drew the maps? How much different they would look, or could look. Yeah. We'd be talking about a whole different. First of all, we'd be talking about Speaker Jeffries right now, right? Because Democrats in California adopted almost this exact process. New Jersey's got a very bipartisan process. New York, remember how much we talked about the New York redistricting map being thrown out by a court because New York adopted a fair districting process. Different than this, but again, put guardrails on itself. Virginia adopted a redistricting reform proposal that kept Democrats in Virginia from gerrymandering. Michigan adopted a commission, a citizen-led commission, not dissimilar to this. So what you have is an asymmetry where Democrats have controlled the process. They have tended towards a process that is bipartisan and oftentimes citizen-led. If not citizen-led, it is still constraining Democratic exercise of brute political power. But where Republicans are in control, they don't do that. So we need it in Ohio. We need it in some of these other Republican-led states.
Well, I can feel our audience yelling through the screen that, do you think it's naive of Democrats to do this? Because, in my opinion, this is basically just unilateral disarmament. When you have blue states and I understand why they're doing it, because it's good governance is what we want to see for the rest of the country. But by virtue of doing it, when only the left is doing it, all it does is basically surrender power to the right and make it so that we could never see good governance throughout the entire country because we're not in control long enough or enough control to actually pass anything.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm either going to please your audience or I'm going to anger your audience. But here you go. Okay, I wasn't in favor of what Virginia did. I live in Virginia, and I was one of the few vocal supporters on the left opponents on the left who opposed the Democrats adopting the process they did. I was not a fan of the New York amendments for exactly the reasons. And California has been in place for a long time. But look, I think if you want to get Republicans to adopt a fair process that across the states, one of the ways they could do that, hey, California Democrats, one of the ways to do that is to say you're going to remove the restrictions in California unless you start to see some Republican states adopt a similar process or until Congress adopts national legislation like the Freedom to Vote Act, the For the People Act, that would impose a national standard. California's got a lot of power here, as does New York.
Do you think there's a world in which, recognizing the dire threat to democracy that's facing us, we could have legislators in Sacramento, legislators in Albany who say, look, we'll do a Democratic gerrymander, we'll call it a Democratic gerrymander, and we'll leave it in place with a trigger that when there's some, that when X states, Texas, Florida, whatever it is, decide to enact fair maps, we'll be the first ones, automatic triggers, so that we'll have fair maps in place too. We can even draw those fair maps, or in the event that we have a national standard, to your exact point, if we have a Voting Rights Act. But until then, why are we going to be the only ones that basically lay down our arms, metaphorically speaking, and just allow Republicans to run roughshod and make it so that we'll never be in power long enough to see those maps be enacted nationwide, fair maps?
Yeah, look, I think that's the right question to be asking. And I think Democrats have to look at this again before we get to 2030 and the next round of redistricting. I mean, you mentioned Florida. And let's be honest, there is no grosser abuse of the redistricting tool than Florida, because Florida actually adopted, by popular initiative, by referendum, at the ballot, voters at the ballot box, did adopt the Fair District Amendments that prohibited the kind of gerrymandering that DeSantis did anyway. He ignored them. He did it anyway. And my team is continuing to litigate that case in the Florida Supreme Court. But, the fact is that if Republicans are not going to play by these rules, what's the point of having the rules? And why are the Democrats in only blue states following the good government approach? So, look, one of the things that drives me crazy is when people say, look, both sides gerrymander. It just isn't true. Yeah. It just isn't true. The maps, if we had gerrymandering on both sides, we'd have Democrats in charge of Congress. If we had gerrymandering on no one's side, if we just had fair districts across the country, we'd have Democrats in control of Congress.
Yeah, perfectly put. Well, we will continue to beat this drum, especially as this issue becomes more and more front and center. With that said, again, for those watching right now, to support the invaluable work that Mark and his team are doing in the courts, please make sure to sign up for Democracy Docket. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.